what we've seen actually is neighbor-to-neighbor food sharing up dramatically versus pre-COVID-19 versus the old normal.
Saasha, co-founder of the food sharing app Olio, thank you for taking some time out of your day to have a quick chat with me.
It's a delight actually to speak to someone who I'm not related to, so thanks for inviting me.
No worries. First of all, can you start by telling me what was your old normal and what is your new normal?
So the old normal for Olio, at its heart, Olio is a neighbor-to-neighbor food sharing platform. It's been that way since we founded in 2015. Our vision is to bring people together in the local community to share our most precious resource, which we believe is food. And as I'm sure you're aware, a tragic portion of food, over a third, goes to waste. It's really bad for the environment. It makes no sense because we have people who aren't getting enough food to eat. It's just absolutely senseless. So the thing is, half of all food waste takes place in the homes. So our vision and our purpose is to fix that by connecting neighbors to share. It's the new normal is not that much different, but there have been some really interesting opportunities that have emerged. And also I would say that what we are, essentially a neighbor-to-neighbor food sharing app, has all of a sudden become very relevant to a large number of people who previously might have thought, oh, that's a lovely, nice idea, but I don't have time for it. And so what we've seen actually is neighbor-to-neighbor food sharing up dramatically versus pre-COVID-19 versus the old normal. I don't know if it's because people are at home or because which means they have more time, or because it's just become, the value of food has become really clear, especially when you're talking about food shortages, empty shelves, and people who are self-isolating. So, so that's a little bit, I guess, of the difference.
I know you've got a couple of incredible campaigns out at the moment.
Yep.
Can you just tell us a little bit about those? Did you come up with these specifically in the last 6 weeks? So you got Cook for Carers and Cook for Kids.
As soon as we heard about school closures, we, I'm actually class rep for my son. He's in year 3, and a lot of questions were coming through from parents about school meals and the implications for, just generally what life would be like after schools were closed, but also what about those children that depend upon those free school meals. And I think my co-founder Tessa was out jogging, which is usually when she gets her run inspiration. But she came up with hashtag Cook for Kids, and it was something that immediately everyone got quite excited about. The idea of cooking fresh, homemade meals for not just for children, but for the whole families or anyone that's really affected by lockdown and school closures. So we reached out, and we've done this in the past. We've tried to connect with celebrity chefs, and we've had no luck whatsoever. But I guess the campaign was, was timely and relevant, and we had an enormously positive response from lots of different so-called celebrity chefs. Hugh Fernley-Whittingstall, I can never pronounce his name, and Melissa Hemsley, and James Martin, and actually dozens who stepped forward. And this was really important because they amplified our campaign across social. They provided recipes. They were just in the print edition of Grazia. I saw today Melissa Hemsley was talking about Olio. So it really helped us to get reach and reach mainstream everyday Brits who might not otherwise know about Olio. But then we quickly realized that it's quite a narrow category, just cooking for kids. And the reality is that there are lots of other people, essential workers, frontline staff, people who are now entered into a vulnerable situation because they become recently unemployed. And so we extended the campaign by adding the hashtag Cook for Carers. And we partnered with the NHS, who's promoted that to frontline staff. But both Cook for Kids and Cook for Carers have been extremely successful. We've seen, last time I looked, well over 5,000 meals that have been shared on the app using those hashtags specifically. And of course, there's loads of sharing that's taking place just in general, maybe not using the hashtag as part of the listing. So we don't know if it's directly related to the campaign or not. And I think people feel it's just a really nice, easy, simple way to make a contribution. We all feel a bit powerless, I think, in this situation, unless, not necessarily certain how we can contribute most effectively. And cooking a few spare portions of food is fun. You can get your kids involved, and there's just such demand out there. Anything that's listed is usually requested in minutes. So it really is making a difference.
So what does that look like then in terms of a process? So say if I want to get involved with Cook for Kids or Cook for Carers,
Mhm.
step one, download
Yeah.
the app. What next?
Step one, yeah, just download the app. It's free. Sort of sign up, and there's a big pink plus button um, right at the bottom, which is where you can add a listing. And you simply, there's a few different ways you could do it, depending on where you live. If you're in London or a city, I can pretty much guarantee that whatever you cook or prepare will be requested. If you're in someplace a bit more remote, and there, you might not know if there's other Olioers near you, although there are ways to see how many people are near you in the app. It's quite straightforward. You could do what we call a pre-listing. So a pre-listing, you would simply put in a stock photo of some food. Let's say you're making, spaghetti bolognese. You would just add a picture. You say, I'm happy to make up to 10 portions or 5 portions or whatever it is that you're willing to do for anyone who would appreciate a home cooked meal. Happy to cook for children and their families affected by school closures. Happy to cook for carers as a priority. Many people, me too, I'm happy to cook for anyone who's willing to, and needs it. And I don't necessarily like to make people feel like they need to qualify why they might be requesting the food. But you can easily say priority for families and carers. You put the hashtag in if you want to unlock your badge. And then you basically just upload it. And that will send, when you create a listing, which is a lot simpler than what it sounds like. I just described it takes 10 or 20 seconds. It will send a push notification to other users nearby to let them know that you have added something. Now, in this instance, you haven't actually added something, but you've given your neighbors a heads up that you're more than willing to cook for them. And then if it's something they're interested in, they would just request that listing and say, you know what, I'd love 4 portions. I could come at this time. And then you go about cooking for them and they pop around. Now, obviously you can't leave your house except for essential activities. And you're not supposed to come into contact with others. So what everyone is doing is hiding outside in a safe space, and sort of just messaging a few minutes before they arrive and then putting it on their doorstep, so that there's a no contact handover. And then also we have we've prevented people from adding non-essential listings to the app. Sure. During this time. And we've also really have very strong messaging about don't make an extra trip for Olio, but if you can fit it in your daily trip to the supermarket or exercise, then it's fine.
So simple and brilliant. So what is the impact of these 2 campaigns been? Have there been any feedback, any positive feedback or any stories?
God, there's endless numbers of stories. Olio wouldn't exist without stories. I mean, every day, tens of thousands of times, people are meeting on the doorstep to share food and other essential household items. The stories the positive stories are just so abundant. We even have a Twitter handle that's just dedicated to stories called Olio Stories, where we screenshot stories and share them all day long. So yesterday, someone wrote to me, said that she had done the campaign over the weekend, Cook for Carers specifically, and that within minutes of cooking, a nurse who's also the mother of 2 children came and requested and picked up the food. And then she had sent me the screenshot of their exchange, and it was very sweet because the person who collected just said how eternally grateful she was to have access to the food, and that she felt a bit emotional because it's the first time she's ever picked up food before, but that it really did make a big difference. And thank God there are angels all around, more or less, looking after each other. So those are the stories, the names, the faces that we try and highlight on our Twitter and Instagram feeds, just to inspire people and bring it to life, really.
Taking it a bit broader, so we're not just talking around COVID-19. What I'm actually really interested in is your vision. So your vision as a business, and I guess you as an individual, is that everyone on the planet should have enough food to eat without destroying the world or destroying the planet.
Yeah.
I'm interested to see where this came from, because I did a little bit of snooping on your LinkedIn. I saw that you had an extensive
Yeah.
corporate background. What
Yeah.
happened? What happened to get you onto this path?
Well, what's not on LinkedIn is sort of what happened before I was 18 years old. I was raised by hardcore hippies in rural America. So my last name, is Celestial-One. My parents made that up. I had a very untraditional childhood. I'm the oldest of 6 children, and we grew up, at least for the first part of my childhood, not very well off. So my mom was really, really resourceful, and I was her sort of scavenger buddy. And we would collect things all around town that other people had thrown away, from food to plants to, toilet fixtures from houses that were being torn down. And we resold, we repurposed, we upcycled, and that's how we made ends meet. So as a kid, I learned very, very early that things of value shouldn't go to waste. And I really had internalized that. And it makes me, feel physically pained when I see like excess and disposable waste of any kind. But I also really rebelled against that. I said, you know what, this isn't how I want to live my life. I really wanted much more financial security and professional security than my parents had. And so I was a sort of straight A student who, as soon as she could, like, left her small town and went to New York City to work at an investment bank. And it took me more than a decade of working in banking and management consulting. I got my business school, I got my MBA, et cetera. It took me quite a long time before I felt secure.
Yeah.
But I did reach that point, and coincidentally, it was around the time I was becoming a mother, and I just realized that I was a fish out of water, and I had a really strong desire my parents were entrepreneurs, and I, as a kid, had at least a dozen different businesses. And before Olio, I started the business as well. And I just had a strong desire to return to doing something, or find something that I woke up every day absolutely convinced it was the most important thing I could be spending my precious hours of the day on, especially if I was going to be spending time away from my child. So Tessa is a very different, but also very similar thematic upbringing, and then professional career, and then coming full circle to the values you're raised with. And she's one of my best friends from business school, and we were at similar points in our lives, and decided to put our heads together, and that's when we came up with Olio.
What learnings would you give from running Olio, getting to this point? What is the one thing that stands out for you?
I do really believe in the mantra to do things that don't scale. Olio is born out of that. We never build anything or automate anything or invest in anything until the manual version of that is completely broken. This is all sort of lean startup methodology. I really recommend that every entrepreneur read at least once, if not multiple times, the lean startup, and figure out how to incorporate that into their business. And it's only when you've done something, and it's, when you're doing something manually that isn't scalable, and you get to the point where like it breaks, that's when we improve it or fix it or invest in it. It's really tempting when you've got scarce resources to want to sort of accelerate and develop something that's, because you have an idea in your head of what you think it needs to be, or how the market's going to respond, or customers are going to respond, or users. But until you actually get that real feedback, then you're just building in a vacuum. The other piece of advice, is just to listen to podcasts and to listen to other entrepreneurs. I am an obsessive podcast listener. I probably listen to 20 hours a week, and I've been doing that since the beginning. You can learn so much. There's almost nothing out there that someone hasn't tried, or a question that someone hasn't answered. And the more entrepreneurs you listen to, the more pattern recognition you see. So that's also a good tip.
On that point around, because this is essentially all that I'm trying to do here, so giving other people who may be in a similar boat to you, or a future entrepreneur or future social entrepreneur, I want them to be able to listen to this and be inspired and actually generate some learning. So based on your first point around the lean startup methodology, can you actually give, because you're an app, right? It's a tech-based business. can you give an example of how you applied the lean methodology to solve a particular area in your business, or to arrive at some kind of breakthrough?
When we came up with the idea for Olio, we sat down and we wireframed what is essentially Olio today. Well before we built anything, we had to see if people would actually perform the underlying behavior that we were hoping to facilitate, which was to share food with strangers and then walk over or to someone else's house and pick up food that was donated by a stranger. So lean startup methodology is that we didn't build anything. We made a WhatsApp group and we recruited 12 strangers through a type form survey that we did, that we blasted on the local Facebook groups. And we put those 12 strangers in a WhatsApp group for 2 weeks. And we said, rules were simple: share food you don't want, and if you want it, private message and go pick it up. So over those 2 weeks, we saw 26 shares successfully take place. And when we debriefed the participants, they all said, first of all, you have to build this. That was such an amazing experience. It felt so good, and it was really fun. And by the way, it doesn't really need to be much better than this WhatsApp group. So immediately we were able to strip out all kinds of features, ratings, map, categories. We still don't have a search button, right? Because it hasn't broken, and it's not like, so we never build anything until we really know that building it will help.
You mentioned your tech team. How big is your tech team? And are they in-house or are they outsourced?
We're a fully remote team, always have been. Tech team, goodness, I want to say 9, 8.
And the reason I'm asking is, how did it start off, tech? Were you always in-house and you just had a few freelancers working with you, or did you start outsourced? Like, what were those first stepping stones into initially building out that tech?
So the very first thing we did when it was just Tess and I, and we were just bootstrapped in the summer of 2015, is we found an agency called Simple Web, based in Bristol, who we love to this day. And in exchange for a small equity stake, they agreed to build the MVP version of the app at a reduced cost. So that's how we got the very basic version built. And then it included roughly sort of 6 months of ongoing support. During those 6 months, that's when it's our job to build. The product is the app, but more so the product is the users. Without the network of users, the app has no, you need both.
You need to show the product market fit, right? And the product's just a vehicle, the app's just a vehicle to do so.
Yeah, so during those 6 months, then we, without going into too many details, worked really hard to build up the network of users so that we could demonstrate traction, so that we could then take that traction to go fundraise. And then when we closed our seed round in October of 2015, and we immediately hired a lead developer who's still with us today, who leads the tech team.
That seems like a very, very rational and pragmatic approach, right? Because you struck up a deal so that you brought in outside support, so you had that team, and then you were solely focused on generating that product market fit to give you that leverage to talk with investors. If anyone else who's looking to build an app or a tech-based product or solution, would you suggest them going down that same route?
One thing I would suggest is that you probably don't need to build, I wouldn't build an app until you've sort of outgrown like a mobile web app. Yeah. Because that's a lot cheap. Apps are really expensive, and they require a lot of maintenance. And I think that mobile web apps have moved on and provide so much functionality now that you can get by without an app for a long time. That would be my recommendation.
Because I think a lot of people like apps because it's like a buzzword and something to jump on, and it's almost a hot new thing, right? Where actually you can't just bring out an app and it replacing the need to provide genuine value to an end user.
I mean, 80% of all app downloads are deleted within, 10 minutes.
And there's stats around the amount of apps that people actually use as well. And it's all around creating a habit, especially something like Olio. It's around creating a habit around using the app. I want to finish on 3 power questions. So we end every single episode. We end every single episode with these 3 questions. The point is not dwell on it. I usually have a tendency to want to dwell on it and ask that follow up, but I'll ask a question, you answer from the gut, and we'll just have back and forth. Ready?
My gut's a bit bigger since I've been home for the last 2 months. Yes, I'm ready.
first of all, what shifts would you like to see in society after COVID-19, when things have started to return back to a shred of normality?
Very much would like to see, I don't know if it's possible, but I'd like to see a continuation in the sort of decreased level of carbon emissions.
Yeah.
Whether that's more people who move towards cycling from driving, or more people who decide they don't need to commute at all because they actually can work from home quite productively. I believe that there will be a knock-on effect into the quote-unquote new normal, and that will result in less output, environmental negative output. And I hope that can be sustained.
What will you tell your hypothetical great-grandchildren when it comes to the topic of COVID-19?
I think I will tell them it was a once-in-a-lifetime opportunity where the whole world pressed pause at the same time, and that their father was old enough to remember it, and he spent 12 weeks out of school self-learning, and it was a really special opportunity to experience a collective global pause.
Last question. What's keeping you going, personally and professionally?
Online gym classes are helping a lot. And then professionally, it's the realization that obviously the situation is very severe in that there's going to be a huge economic shock. There's been a huge health shock. Lots of people have lost loved ones. I don't want to minimize any of that tragedy or suffering.
Yeah.
But we are one of the organizations that is going to benefit from this. And that we've been spending a long time trying to persuade people that now might be the time to share resources with people nearby, and to be generous, and to stop and pause and be more community minded. And the COVID-19 crisis has been a catalyst for people to reconsider their role within the community, and they've then found out that Olio is literally a perfect platform for helping them to behave in this new way. So for us, professionally, I'm really excited to see on the other side more mainstream people using Olio.
Brilliant. And yeah, like conversations I've been having, and internally and externally, is obviously taking away the fact that it's a tragedy and people have lost loved ones and people are in terrible situations. Yeah. It's a positive for catalyst change. It's a catalyst for positive change.
For positive change, yep.
Yeah, especially when there's businesses like Olio who have such an authentic mission behind them as well. It's almost, there's an opportunity to positively take advantage of this sentiment that's in the air that's come as a result of this collective pause, right? People are now much more introspective, much more able to think about their own impact on their surroundings and their environment. So coming in with an offering like Olio, especially with your 5 years previously of building that groundwork where that solution is there, it's got that social proof. I think that's the key. And that's the key to any business like Olio who's actually looking to create a tangible change. Anyone who's pioneering something, a new behavior, a new product, would go through years of people just thinking they're ridiculous or stupid, they'll never catch on. And something like this needs to happen for it to come into public consciousness. It to move from the early adopters to the mainstream.
The more mainstream, exactly.
It's an exciting time for Olio specifically. Saasha, thank you so much for taking the time. I'm really looking forward to releasing this.
Thank you so much. Enjoy the last of the lockdown.